Others transmigrate into a land of riches, surrounded by beauties. Even if they aren't, they can still copy a few poems to show off, reaching the peak of life. But my transmigration made me a prisoner. What the hell is this? Give me back my protagonist's script. The world he transmigrated to not only has dangerous stuff like human demon, GU, and Buddhist things, but also this capital city is deep and treacherous. One wrong move, and you're done. But who asked me to be the protagonist? My luck is off the charts, turning misfortune into good fortune, picking up money and visiting brothels daily. Carefree life? Heh, that's just Shuqian's facade. Behind the scenes, even he doesn't know that he's just a pawn in the hands of some old schemer. The story officially begins. Shuqian is still dreaming when suddenly, a pungent smell assaults his nostrils. He thought that stupid dog at home had run onto his bed to poop again. When he opened his eyes, a huge butt was right in his face. Shuqian instinctively wanted to push it away, but the next second, the dog disappeared, and instead, he had a cold pair of shackles on his hands. He is now in the prison of the Jingjiao prefecture. He clearly remembered being at a bar yesterday, celebrating his promotion with his buddies. Suddenly, a sharp pain hit him, as if Shuqian's head was about to explode. A memory that didn't belong to him flooded into his mind. Shuqian, courtesy name Mingyan. His father died in the Battle of Shanghai 19 years ago. His mother died of illness afterward, and he was raised by his second uncle since childhood. He had been practicing martial arts for years, reaching the peak of refining essence at 18, and after that, stagnated. With the help of his second uncle, he became a constable in Chang'an County under Jingjiao Prefecture. Shuqian finally realized that he had transmigrated, and he became a constable, transmigrated and still a cop. As for why he was in prison, because 3 days ago, his second uncle, Xu Shiping, a 7th-ranked green-robed prison blade captain, was escorting a batch of tax silver on the way to mutual compensation. 150,000 taels of tax silver was robbed, and the emperor was furious. He ordered Xu Shiping to be beheaded in 5 days, all male members of the 3 clans to be exiled to the frontier, and female relatives sent to the brothel. As Xu Shiping's nephew, Shuqian was dismissed from his post and thrown into the prison of Jingjiao Prefecture, and there were only 2 days left before he was exiled to the frontier. This is freaking hell mode from the start. This world is still a feudal dynasty, with no reason to speak of. What is the frontier? Hell, barren, harsh climate. Most of the exiled prisoners don't live past 10 years, and many more die on the road due to various accidents and diseases before even reaching the frontier. Shuqian swallowed hard, fantasizing that there was still a chance. So he whispered, System daddy, come out quickly. But after yelling for a long time, he just looked like an idiot calling out for his dad, and there was no system at all. I have to save myself. I can't just wait here to die. So he thought of the first way, escape. He is a 9th-ranked martial artist, at the peak of refining essence, and his physical quality is top tier. But in this world, he's just a silver rank, and the escape plan is a no-go. The second method, rely on family and friends. But the Xu family is not some wealthy clan, and the family members are scattered all over. 150,000 taels of tax silver was robbed. Who would dare to intercede for him at this critical moment? That path is also blocked. Then there is only one last way left. According to the Great Phone Law, making amends for one's crimes can exempt one from the death penalty. But to do that, he has to find the silver, and now he is stuck in prison, without any detailed case files. It is really like calling to the heavens and getting no response. At this time, a person came in to visit with the jailer, stopping right in front of Shuqian. The visitor was Xu Xinyan, the son of his second uncle Xu Shiping, his cousin, a newly promoted scholar in the Great Phone, studying at the Yunlu Academy, a top-tier keyboard warrior. He remembered that the original owner didn't have a good relationship with this cousin. The purpose of this visit is to tell Shuqian that the soldiers escorting him to the frontier took 300 taels of silver from Xu Xinyan, which was the last of their family savings, to ensure Shuqian's safety on the road and no accidents on the way. And this Xu Xinyan has been stripped of his official title, but is protected by big shots in the academy, so he doesn't have to be exiled. Shuqian stared at Xu Xinyan with an indifferent expression. He knew that Xu Xinyan was probably more than just stripped of his official title. He also had to enter the lowly registry, and his descendants would not be allowed to take imperial examinations, forever unable to rise again. and the women of the Shu family would be sent to the brothel in 2 days, suffering humiliation. Xu Xinyan is a scholar. How could he have the face to live in this capital city? Xu Qian directly stated his purpose. You want to make money, don't you? Xu Xinyan looked at his older cousin in shock, just with a few words, a few expressions, and he guessed his thoughts, but he still stubbornly turned his head, coldly uttering, "What does it have to do with you?" Then he paused, still feeling a little unbearable. After all, they were family, and said with resolution, "You better live on," and turned to leave. Xu Qian grabbed him. "No freaking way. Now is not the time to give up." He stared intently at Xu Xinyan and said solemnly, "Get me the case files of the tax silver robbery. Modern forensic investigation methods, crime scene investigation, surveillance, and autopsies. 3 essential elements are indispensable, but there are no surveillance cameras in ancient times, and no one died in the tax silver robbery, and he is trapped in prison. The only breakthrough now is the case file. Fortunately, the case file can restore the crime scene to some extent. However, Xu Xinyan simply does not understand what Xu Qian wants the case file for. If Xu Qian were to say that he wanted to solve the case, Xu Xinyan would probably think his brain is fried. Xu Qian could only find a random excuse. "I want to know what happened, and even if I die, I should die knowing why, right?" Xu Xinyan didn't think much and said, "I've read the case file. I can tell you." Xu Qian refused. "You write it down. Oral accounts are meaningless. I need to know all the details of the case." Oral accounts tend to subconsciously ignore things that they consider unimportant. Xu Xinyan didn't say anything, and turned away, looking at Xu Xinyan's back getting farther and farther away. Whether he lives or dies depends on what comes next. After a long time, as footsteps grew closer, Xu Xinyan is back. He wrote out the case file word for word. Xu Qian couldn't wait to sit down, looking at the case file, not hearing what Xu Xinyan was saying behind him at all. Xu Xinyan was also helpless. Perhaps this was the last time they will meet in their lives. "Take care." Then he turned and left, and Xu Qian was still immersed in the case file. After a long time, Xu Qian sighed. It turns out, reading is still quite useful. If the original owner wasn't literate, he freaking wouldn't be able to recognize these scribbles. 3 days ago, at Maoshiraku, that is, 6:30 in the morning, Imperial Blade Captain Xu Shiping was escorting a batch of tax silver into the capital. At Chenshiyiku, the team arrived at Guangnan Street, just across the bridge. Suddenly, a strange gust of wind rose. The horses were frightened and rushed into the river by the street. Then a deafening explosion was heard. The river water rose 6 jong high. The waves were raging. Soldiers jumped into the river to search for silver, but only recovered 1250 taels of silver. The rest of the silver has disappeared. Xu Qian looked confused. What the hell is this? On the other side, in the back hall of Jingzhou Prefecture, a group of big shots were discussing matters. Chen Hangguan, the magistrate of Jingzhou Prefecture, said, "The emperor ordered us to recover the tax silver before Xu Shiping is beheaded, but now there are only 2 days left. You 2 adults must hurry." Li Yuchen heard this and said, "Is there any new information from Xu Shiping?" The magistrate was helpless. He is just a martial artist. He just keeps shouting about being wronged, and doesn't even know how the tax silver was lost. Chu Saiwei said, "I used the oblivion technique on him. Xu Shiping is not lying." Chu Saiwei is the youngest disciple of the head of the Xishan Jian. Everyone began to worry. The magistrate said, "We have investigated and interrogated Xu Shiping. We have gone over his personal connections and financial situation. Combined with the oblivion technique of the Xishan Jian, his suspicion has now been ruled out. But even if the tax silver is lost, Xu Shiping's dereliction of duty is still punishable by death." On the other hand, Chu Saiwei was not affected by his appetite at all, and was still munching on sugarcane. Li Yuchen looked at him with a dark expression, and at this time, a piece of sugarcane dregs did not fall where it should. Li Yuchen's heart tightened. He immediately activated his qi, lifted the sugarcane dregs up, and put it back where it should be. Li Yuchen felt comfortable all over at this moment. It seems he is another OCD patient. At this time, footsteps could be heard. A servant came in with a bag of steamed buns, and a letter from Xishan Jian, which was handed to Chu Saiwei. Chu Saiwei glanced at the letter. Xishan Jian said, "Within 20 miles along the way, no demon energy was detected in the river, and there was no trace of demon energy on the shore." This news made the hearts of the 2 tighten, as if they had been struck on the head. Where can 150,000 taels of silver be taken? They still have to go ashore, right? It's been 3 days, and they haven't even found any trace of the other party. And Li Yuchen was very calm. Could it be that we are investigating in the wrong direction? Maybe it wasn't caused by demons? If it wasn't caused by demons, then where did the strange wind come from? The silver entered the river. How How did it just disappear out of thin air? And at this time, Chu Qian was engrossed in reading the case file. But at this moment, he discovered a key clue. How could demons stir up waves several jong high and crack the banks on both sides? There are monsters in this world. The demon race has existed since ancient times, hunting and devouring humans, and in the 100,000 mountains of southern Xinjiang, there is the largest gathering place of the demon race, the 10,000 Demon Kingdom. 100 years ago, the Western countries, led by Buddhism, declared war on the 10,000 Demon Kingdom in southern Xinjiang. They fought for 60 years, and finally wiped out the 10,000 Demon Kingdom. History calls this battle the Jiazi extermination of demons. Since then, the luck of the demon race was damaged, and gradually declined, and Buddhism took off from then on. Buddhism and Taoism flourished, but this is not logical. What would these demons do with the stolen silver? Although it is said that demons never ask their heart when doing things, and do as they please, Li Yuchen sighed. He couldn't figure it out either. Just then, Chu Saiwei said, "If it's demons, isn't human flesh more delicious? What do they need silver for?" But when he finished speaking, looking at the steamed bun in his hand, his mind was full of human flesh, and it was disgusting just thinking about it. But for a foodie, wasting food is shameful, so he gobbled it up. In a short time, all the steamed buns in his hand were wiped out. He then spoke indifferently, "Silver is not as tempting to demons as living humans. Even if they wanted silver, stealing or robbing would be more secure than directly robbing tax silver in the capital of Great Foam." The magistrate pondered for a moment. That makes sense, but it can't be ruled out that they were instructed by others. But Li Yuchen was puzzled. Then who would instruct the demons to steal the tax silver? What is the reason? Why does it have to be this batch of tax silver? Why does it have to be 150,000 taels? The magistrate was also having a headache. Maybe the mastermind needs a large sum of money, but cannot recklessly collect wealth, so they have set their sights on the tax silver. But Li Yuchen also pointed out a suspicious point. The route for escorting the tax silver is random, decided by Xu Shiping on the spot, but the demons were able to ambush in the river in advance. There is a high probability that there is an inside agent in the escort team. Then he suggested going to Yunlu Academy to consult a Confucian sage. But Chu Saiwei was unhappy. "Are you looking down on the oblivion technique of our Si Shenjian? I already said. The soldiers who escorted the tax silver were all unaware." Li Yuchen dared not answer. He couldn't afford to offend the Si Shenjian. But the next moment, Chu Saiwei himself shifted his attention. "Before sunset, I have to get rid of this shitty job, leave the Jingjiao prefecture, and enter the palace to find the eldest princess." Just thinking about the delicacies in the palace, he couldn't help but drool. The magistrate was also helpless. The case was progressing slowly, and time was of the essence. Why doesn't Sir Li go and ask for advice from Duke Wei? Li Yuchen heard this and coldly yelled, "You civil officials have censors, and we watchmen also have them. This is Duke Wei's assessment for me." The magistrate was helpless. "This won't do, that won't do. The whole court is watching us now." And in the prison, Chu Qian was looking at the case file with a dazed look. "I once thought about transmigrating back to ancient times, copying poems to show off, and also hitting on some babes along the way. Who would have thought that after transmigrating, I would still be beaten by society? If it really is the work of demons, then I will definitely have no way to deal with it. But this is just the conjecture of Jingjiao prefecture. I can't be influenced by them. I have to analyze it myself. Maybe I can still salvage the situation. Why would demons steal tax silver? For them, isn't human flesh more fragrant? Even if they lack silver, there's no need to target tax silver. The scriptures say that all the demon girls of the demon race are charming, with slender figures. I wonder if there are any cat girls or dog girls." His thoughts drifted too far. Chu Qian resolutely slapped himself. After all, he was a well-known righteous gentleman. What is effective reasoning? After slapping himself, Chu Qian analyzed seriously. There are two suspicious points in this tax silver case. The first is the strange wind. Apart from martial artists, all major cultivation systems have the ability to create strange winds. So the strange wind can only indicate that there are cultivators involved. My second uncle, who is a martial artist, has a reduced suspicion, although it is not ruled out that he colluded with others. The second is the explosion. It is normal for high-level cultivators to cause explosions during battles. But in this case, there was no fight, so the appearance of the explosion is unreasonable, unless it is an explosion that had to happen. In the major cultivation systems in this world, what profession needs to rely on explosions to achieve their goals? Thinking of this, he suddenly realized that he was led astray. He made the same mistake as the Jingzhou prefecture, only making judgments based on the most obvious clues in the case, which was too rash. He needs to change his way of thinking. What if this was a carefully planned human event? Maybe the flaw is not in the two most obvious clues, but in these various traces. Suddenly, Xu Qian's mind was like an explosion. He suddenly had an epiphany. He hurriedly knocked on the iron door and shouted loudly. Sure enough, he was discovered by the jailer soon after, who said impatiently, "What are you yelling about?" But Xu Qian had a smug look on his face. "Tell your magistrate that I have important clues about the tax silver case." On the other side, the magistrate and the others really couldn't think of any other way, so they planned to take the case file to the watchman's office and ask Duke Wei for help. Xu Wei kindly reminded them, "With our great phones experts taking action, you two don't have to be held accountable by His Majesty." But in Duke Wei's eyes, losing points is more serious than being held accountable by His Majesty. Li Yuchen was speechless, but what else could they do? At this time, a servant came to report, "Your Excellency, according to the jailer, Xu Shiping's nephew Xu Qian said that he has important clues about the tax silver case." The magistrate was shocked. Without considering whether it was true or false, he would bring the person over to ask first. After a while, Xu Qian, wearing handcuffs and shackles, slowly walked into the Jingzhou prefecture's yamen. Xu Qian observed for a moment. The one wearing the flying robe should be the fourth-rank official magistrate, and the uncle next to him with a silver snail embroidered on his chest should be from the Watchman organization. But the next moment, he was stunned in place. "This girl is so beautiful. I wonder if she is married yet?" Then Xu Qian's gaze slipped down, and he saw a flat chest. His interest was immediately reduced, so he quickly bowed. "Greetings, Your Excellency." The magistrate didn't talk nonsense. "Xu Qian, when you were in prison 3 days ago, you didn't say that you had any important clues. Do you know the consequences of concealing information?" Xu Qian secretly complained. This old fox in the officialdom, even if he was anxious, would never ask for clues directly. But since he is here, the plan is already half successful. "Your Excellency, just now second brother Xu came to see me. I asked him for the case file, and I deduced the truth of the case from the case file." The magistrate and Li Yuchen were completely unable to sit still. "Just from the case file?" Xu Qian replied calmly. "That's right. The tax silver case was not caused by demons, but by humans. When someone says something that goes beyond your understanding, people's first reaction is to refute it, and then find various arguments to prove that what you said is wrong." Xu Qian said that the tax silver case was not done by demons, but the world all thought it was done by demons. The magistrate directly cursed, "You little brat, you're simply talking nonsense. It is almost a foregone conclusion that the tax silver was robbed by demons. Guards, drag him down and beat him with 100 strokes." Xu Qian didn't react for a moment. "I just said one sentence, and I get 100 strokes? Where is the law?" The guards didn't care so much and were about to press Xu Qian down, but at this moment, wait, came. It was Li Yuchen who said it. He was very curious why Xu Qian dared to say such a thing. Xu Qian breathed a sigh of relief and said, "According to the testimony of the city gate guards, my second uncle entered the city at Mao Shiraku, and at Chen-Shi-Yi-Ku, the team escorting the tax silver arrived at Guangnan Street. At this time, the strange wind suddenly rose, and the horses were frightened and rushed into the river." The magistrate interrupted impatiently, "We know all this. The demons were hiding in the river, waiting for an opportunity to rob the tax silver." Xu Qian also interrupted him, "No, the strange wind and the explosion are just smoke screens. In fact, it is to make you ignore a fatal flaw." The magistrate and the others were shocked. There were still flaws that they didn't see. Xu Qian continued, "My second uncle was escorting 150,000 taels of tax silver. May I ask you three adults, how many pounds does 150,000 taels of silver weigh?" All three were silent. "Who the hell knows how many pounds it is?" Xu Qian was also speechless. Answering his own question is not cool at all, right? It's 9,375 pounds. Xu Wei asked doubtfully, "What does this prove?" Xu Qian is tired. What does it prove?" "It proves that, little sister, you are not very smart." Xu Qian continued to ask, "How far is it from the city gate to Guangnan Street?" 30 li. Then the two of them were in this question and answer. "How many markets are passed along the way?" 4. "How fast is a mule's pace?" Li Yuchen was about to answer, but he suddenly realized a very serious problem. The time doesn't match. Guangnan Street is 30 li away from the south gate, with the strength of a mule, and passing through 4 markets along the way. Entering the city at Mao Shiraku, it is impossible to arrive at Guangnan Street at Chen-Shi-Yi-Ku. Li Yuchen was terrified. But that not-so-smart little sister still didn't understand. The tax silver was indeed escorted to Guangnan Street at Chensha, and there were many people who witnessed the horses rushing into the river at that time. So it can't be fake. How do you explain that? Li Yuchen also had no answer, because all he knew was that the time didn't add up. Xu Qian explained, because what was being escorted was not silver at all. The magistrate couldn't sit still. Isn't this nonsense? Not to mention whether your second uncle and the soldiers escorting it are blind. The case file records the statements of the people who were present at the time. The horses rushed into the river, and the white silver rolled into the water. Can that also be fake? Xu Qian knew that now speaking can no longer convince people. So he borrowed a pen and paper and drew randomly on it, and then handed it to the magistrate and said, "Your Excellency, please prepare the things written on the paper according to my requirements." The magistrate took it over to take a look. Although he didn't know what Xu Qian wanted to do, his first reaction was that this is so ugly. Chu Tsaiwei took it over to take a look and thought it was some kind of rubbish. It was just something ordinary written by a crude martial artist. Everyone had seen it, and Li Yuchen naturally had to take a look. But when he took it over, the corner of the paper was wrinkled, which made Li Yuchen feel uncomfortable all over. Then he couldn't wait to wave his small hand and straighten the paper. Instantly felt that the world was wonderful. After a long time, the things Xu Qian wanted were all ready. The magistrate said indifferently, "The things are all here. Be sure to give this official a satisfactory answer." But Xu Qian wasn't in a hurry to start, but bowed down. "If I help your excellency solve this case, can you write to His Majesty to exempt the Xu family from punishment?" The magistrate nodded. According to the Great Phone Law, making meritorious service to atone for one's father's sins will naturally exempt one from punishment. Now Xu Qian had no more worries, and turned around to start preparing. What is it like for a modern person to travel back to ancient times and conduct chemical experiments? Xu Qian prepared water, salt, iron wire, raw xian paper, porcelain cup, bamboo sticks, and candles. Everything was ready. Although he was not sure if the broken silver, the explosion was what he made. This was not important. The important thing was to open up a train of thought to explain the phenomenon of the broken silver exploding. And what he was going to do now was very simple, using the chemistry knowledge he learned in high school to extract metallic sodium. The first step was to dissolve the crude salt with water. The second step was to cover the mouth of the cup with raw xian paper, and then slowly pour in the salt water. The third step was to place the filtered salt water over the candle to bake. The fourth step was to continuously stir with bamboo sticks until the salt water was dried. Sodium chloride precipitated. Done. The next step was the most difficult. Electricity and the melting point of sodium chloride. In ancient times, it was impossible to achieve these two at all, but there was a profession in this world that could do it. Then he looked at Chu Tsaiwei. "Your Excellency, are you a disciple of the Xi Jian?" The reason why Xu Qian asked this was because Chu Tsaiwei was wearing a bagua symbol. Apart from the disciples of the Xi Jian, no one else should use this thing, right? Chu Tsaiwei said with a proud look, "I am the director of Xi Jian." Xu Qian ignored his arrogance. "Please, sister, help me melt these crystals." But Chu Tsaiwei was a little embarrassed. Only fire melters and alchemists have that ability. "I'm just a 7th rank feng shui master." But his master gave him a magic weapon. With a gentle wave, flames popped out, and Xu Qian quickly stepped back. The flames fell right into the crystals. Xu Qian seized the opportunity and called a halt. Then he put the iron wire in. Then he asked Chu Tsaiwei to conduct electricity. Xu Qian was emotional. This step was difficult, and might fail many times. Chu Tsaiwei turned his hand and drew lightning from the bagua symbol. Then, a series of crackling sounds hit the crystal. Xu Qian quickly called a halt, and then all that was left was apprehension. But luckily, he was blessed by the lucky star and succeeded in one go. The metallic sodium was extracted successfully. Xu Qian poured it out. "Please take a look. Adults, this stuff is much lighter than silver, but its appearance is extremely similar. Will someone use this thing to pass off as the real thing, pretending to be silver?" The magistrate picked it up and took a look. It was indeed much lighter. If what was being transported that day was this, then it would be logical. But Chu Tsaiwei wondered, "You an alchemist as well?" Xu Qian scratched his head awkwardly. "I am just a porter of chemistry." And the magistrate noticed the key point at this time. "Then what about the explosion?" Xu Qian was not in a hurry to explain. He took the metallic sodium and put it in the water. Then the water in the cup seemed to boil. After a while, the whole cup exploded. This scene shocked everyone. How is this possible? What kind of transmigration drama is this? It makes netizens call out that they don't understand chemistry. They don't even dare to transmigrate. After Shu Qian put the metallic sodium in the water, an explosion occurred, which could explain what happened when the silver fell into the water. Li Yuchen pondered. So, we were misled from the beginning. The mastermind used the explosion and strange wind as bait to shift the focus of the investigation. No wonder the Sishin Jian's forgetfulness technique couldn't detect any demons. Chu Tsaiwei was also a little annoyed. I said from the beginning that no demons were detected. You were the ones who didn't believe it. Shu Qian quickly took the conversation, fearing that they would really start arguing here. After the tax silver fell into the water, the soldiers only recovered more than 1,000 taels of silver. If I'm not mistaken, those silver were all laid on top to cover people's eyes. Only then did Li Yuchen shift his attention back to Shu Qian. This kid actually matched all the suspicious points. He is really a prodigy. Thinking of this, he planned to praise Shu Qian, but then, he saw Shu Qian's wrinkled collar. That damn obsessive-compulsive disorder directly rushed to Li Yuchen's head, but he pretended to be calm. He put his hand heavily on Shu Qian's shoulder and smoothed it out, and in the next moment, the whole world became beautiful. However, Shu Qian misunderstood. He was patted on the shoulder. Did this adult appreciate him? At this time, the magistrate spoke. Since the silver is fake, then where did the real silver go? Chu Tsaiwei guessed. The tax silver goes through layers of transfer when it leaves the treasury and enters the capital. If someone is to be convicted, a large number of officials will go to jail. The difficulty of recovering the silver is no less than finding a needle in a haystack, and this matter is already beyond our jurisdiction. We have to report to His Majesty. Li Yuchen sighed. The tax silver is escorted into the capital and passes through layers of transfer. If it was fake, it should have been discovered a long time ago. The only possibility is that it was replaced recently. The magistrate was startled by this sentence. Replaced recently? Then he rushed out in a hurry. He asked people to prepare a sedan, and he was going to travel. Shu Qian watched him rush away in such a hurry, and also quickly chased up. Your Excellency, don't forget your promise to me. But the magistrate didn't respond. Shu Qian sighed in his heart. I hope the tax silver can be recovered before I am exiled. If it is recovered after I am exiled, even if it is recovered, it will not change the Shu family's outcome. And if this magistrate is a black-hearted worm, wanting to monopolize the credit, then I can only resign myself to fate. But at this time, a sweet voice came. Why can salt turn into silver? Then, he saw Chu Tsaiwei rummaging through a bag. Then a sugarcane was taken out. Shu Qian exclaimed, is this Doraemon's treasure bag? Then, Chu Tsaiwei extended the sugarcane in front of Shu Qian. This is for you to eat. Shu Qian looked confused. You're just using this to bribe me. You're just using this to test a cadre? I want to challenge my weakness. But then, he said, I have seen in an ancient book that there is alchemy that can turn salt into silver. Chu Tsaiwei quickly asked, what ancient book is it? Shu Qian thought to himself. It's high school chemistry speaking. Can you understand that? Ancient books. Back then, I still remember the content, but I'm in danger right now, so I'm not in the mood to think about ancient books. Chu Tsaiwei was helpless. You're quite slippery. Our Sishin Jian never interferes in government affairs. The way you are dealt with is up to His Majesty, Shu Qian said with a flattering smile. Wouldn't it be fine if you accepted me as a disciple? With the director's status in the court, it would not be a problem to get a criminal to be a disciple. But Chu Tsaiwei was confused. You are clearly a martial artist. Why do you want to be a mage? Shu Qian said righteously. Because I admire the grace of the director. Chu Tsaiwei saw through his lies at a glance, but he still said, tell me the content of the alchemy ancient book first. Shu Qian pondered for a moment. The content is a bit profound. I'm afraid you can't understand it. You need a detailed and meticulous explanation to be able to grasp it firmly. Chu Tsaiwei snorted disdainfully. In the entire Kyushu, when it comes to alchemy, the mags of my Sishin Jian are the best. Shu Qian took a deep breath. Then, he recited all kinds of high school chemistry terms. Chu Tsaiwei felt dizzy after listening. What is all this stuff? Is he playing me? Then he snatched back the sugarcane, turned around, and left. But when he reached the door, Chu Tsaiwei glanced back at Shu Qian. Then he said to him, our Sishin Jian accepts disciples, only children. Shu Qian reached out his hand, wanting to say something, but after Chu Tsaiwei left, he only said, I'm a child too. The jailer brother next to him comforted Shu Qian. Don't you feel ashamed saying that? Besides, how old are you? Don't you know? Shu Shiping, Imperial Blade Captain, a 7th rank green robe. Because of the tax silver robbery, he was beheaded. The male members of the 3 clans were exiled, and the female relatives were sent to the brothel. The 5-day deadline was up. He knew that his life was about to end, but when he thought about implicating his family, Xu Shiping, who had been loyal to the country and dedicated his life, had come to such an end. But the jailer next to him couldn't listen anymore. After signing and putting your fingerprints, you can leave. Xu Shiping thought he had misheard, but the jailer directly returned his official uniform to him. Xu Shiping looked at his official uniform as if he was dreaming. What the hell happened? The madam immediately jumped out. It must be our son. Xi Nian has been running around these past few days, and the court has made an exception. But Xu Shiping was confused. Logically speaking, even if he is exempted from the death penalty, it is impossible to be reinstated, right? Xu Shiping asked suspiciously. The jailer said indifferently, the case has been solved, and the tax silver has been recovered. According to the Great Phone Law, if an elder in the family has violated the law, the children can atone for their father's sins. The madam praised her son with tears. He's promising. He is a dragon among men. But then, she glared fiercely at Xu Shiping and said, I told him to practice martial arts back then, but you wouldn't agree. You insisted on letting Xu Qian, that little brat, practice martial arts. The meaning of blame was obvious, but it was not that Xu Shiping did not want his son to practice martial arts, but that he simply did not have the talent. The jailer next to him couldn't listen anymore. He coughed twice and said, your nephew Xu Qian, he helped the magistrate solve the tax silver case. He just left, and he should be waiting for you at the back door. The couple spat out a mouthful of 82-year-old blood, and the madam was even more thunderstruck. Didn't my son dredge up relationships to save the whole family? How could it be that unlucky nephew? Isn't he in jail? Thinking of this, she felt a dizziness, and at the back door of the Jingjiao prefecture, Xu Qian waited for a long time but didn't see anyone come out. Just when he was a little impatient, Xu Shiping and the others came out. Xu Qian quickly greeted them. The moment Xu Shiping saw his nephew, a warm current surged in the heart of this martial artist. With tears in his eyes, he stepped forward and patted his shoulder hard. Ning Yin, well done. You almost killed Xu Qian on the spot. Second uncle, you are at the peak of Qi refinement. Are we one rank apart? Xu Qian naturally said these words, without any unfamiliarity, but he was soon attracted by a figure. I actually have such a beautiful and refined younger sister. Xu Qian was shocked. Xu Lingyu was Xu Shiping and Li Aryu's daughter. That is, Xu Qian's cousin. In the original owner's memory, the memories about his younger sister were very vague, and because of Li Aryu, he was a bit hateful, and not very friendly to his cousins. But there was one exception. Xu Qian's youngest cousin Xu Lingyin. The original owner didn't like his cousins, but he was quite nice to this youngest cousin, because the youngest cousin's appearance was finally not inherited from her mother. Xu Lingyin ran over, asking Xu Qian for candy, but he had just come out of the prison, and he didn't have any candy at all. Xu Lingyin was very disappointed. Xu Qian looked at this young sister, who didn't seem very smart. Now he was certain that she had inherited her mother. Li Aryu turned her head stiffly, reluctantly saying, thank you, Xu Qian, for proving the truth. A vague memory flashed in her mind, when she was driven out to a small courtyard next to the Xu residence by her aunt. Xu Qian was furious. He pointed to the sky and swore, I, Xu Qian, will surely make a name for myself in the future, and you better not regret it. Now that she thought about it, it felt so embarrassing. Isn't this the aunt's version of, don't bully the youth for being poor? Xu Qian now looked at the relationship between the original owner and the aunt from a third person's objective point of view. In fact, it was not entirely the aunt's fault. Xu Qian's martial arts practice consumed more than 100 taels of silver every year, which was equivalent to the savings of ordinary people for 20 or 30 years, and that had to be a well-off family. It was not strange that the aunt was resentful, so Xu Qian sincerely said, Auntie, don't rush to thank me. Let's talk after we eat at home. With one sentence, Li Aryu was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Xu Shiping was numb and quickly stepped in to smooth things over. Let's go home first. Do you know what a social death is? If the heavens didn't create me, Xu Xinyan, the great phone would be like a long night. Xu Xinyan kicked open the door. The home where he had lived for 19 years was empty. It was quite desolate. He stepped over the threshold, swayed a few steps inward, and then turned back to close the door. I can't attract the attention of the government. Scholars value face. He walked from the outer courtyard to the inner courtyard, as if he had gone through a long life. He learned to read at the age of 3, memorized poetry at the age of 5, and was already familiar with the classics of the sages at the age of 10. He entered Yunlu Academy to study at the age of 14. He was an 18-year-old Jurin. It was not an exaggeration to call him gifted. His wisdom, his erudition, and his strong will shaped his proud personality in front of his family. He has always been proud, promising, successful, and will be the future mainstay of the Shu family. As a man of 7 feet, he would rather die a glorious death than live a humiliating life. Thinking of this, Shu Xinyan drank the wine in his hand in one gulp and smashed it to the ground. Using the remaining alcohol, he grinded ink on the ground and picked up a brush to write the most epic farewell poem in his life. In life, I am a carefree man. In death, I am an unruly ghost. Shu Xinyan roared 3 times. He took out the prepared rope and hung it on the ginkgo tree in the inner courtyard. Alas, the way of heaven is unfair. If the heavens didn't create me, Shu Xinyan, the great phone would be like a long night under the ginkgo tree. The scholar standing on the chair suddenly took off his hair crown and threw it away. He shook his head hard, letting his hair down. He was uninhibited. He was unruly. He put his head into the rope loop, and then he saw his family with stiff expressions and dull eyes. I, Shu Xinyan, have lived a life of unconstrained freedom. I, Shu Xinyan, am full of talent. The way of heaven is unfair. If the heavens didn't create me, Shu Xinyan, the great phone would be like a long night. Shu Xinyan looked at his family, who had unexpectedly returned. He was still a step too late to die. At this moment, Shu Xinyan's soul was already dead. The cultivation systems of this world were diverse. In addition to the martial artists, who were known as the unlucky system, there were also mags, Confucianists, Buddhists, Taoists, witches, and GU masters. 600 years ago, the Great Phone was established, and the first director of the Sishan Jian divided the ranks for the various systems. Shu Qian was a 9th rank essence refinement martial artist. His second uncle was an 8th rank peak chi refinement, and a 7th rank spirit refinement. Shu Qian did not know about the ranks after that, but Shu Qian knew a lot about the mage system of Sishan Jian, because Sishan Jian was a cultivation system unique to the Great Feng dynasty, and it was extremely high profile. The inventions and creations of the 6th rank alchemists were integrated into thousands of households, but what ranks were after that, he did not know. And Shu Qian only knew the names of the other systems. After transmigrating, he only knew a little about this world, but he couldn't blame the original owner. The original owner grew up in the capital and had limited knowledge. But what Shu Qian was confused about was, why didn't he have any memories about the original owner's death or the moments before he lost consciousness? As for himself, after resigning from the police department, he chose to go into business and became a hard-working member of society. His future life should have been able to afford a mortgage, pay for a betrothal gift, marry a wife and have children. As long as the neighbor next door wasn't surnamed Wang, then it would be a quiet life. But he never expected that he would get drunk while celebrating with a few friends in a bar. Alcohol poisoning, and he died. He had finally obtained a ticket to the middle class, but in a blink of an eye, he was sent to a feudal society. There was still 600,000 for a down payment on a house in his bank card. The most tragic thing in the world is that when a person dies, the money is still there. Forget it. Let's just consider it an inheritance for my parents. But at this moment, he suddenly remembered that there was still 120 gigabytes of his wife in the computer hard drive that he hadn't deleted. What is it like to be called Delong, eldest son? A girl in a green dress walked in through the courtyard door. She was the personal maid of the auntie, named Greenie. Delong, the master asked you to go over for dinner. Greenie's eyes and eyebrows were full of joy. She was sold to the Shu family to serve the auntie when she was 10 years old. After the Shu family suffered disaster, the servants were dismissed. She was worried about her future livelihood. She didn't expect that in just 5 days, the Shu family would be back on their feet. Shu Qian was extremely awkward. Don't call me Delong. Greenie wondered, but Delong is Delong. Shu Qian was helpless. Forget it. I don't believe it anyway. The two walked out of the small courtyard side by side, entering the Shu residence. Greenie hesitated for a moment and said, the master and madam were arguing just now. What's going on? Shu Qian asked. It seems that the madam insisted on knowing how the tax silver was switched, and as for who did it, the master couldn't answer, and they started arguing. Greenie whispered, Delong knows, right? Shu Qian pondered. On the way back from the Jingzhou prefecture, he told his second uncle that the tax silver was not robbed, but that it was switched. The auntie didn't say anything at the time. Turns out she had been keeping it in her heart. As soon as Shu Qian stepped over the threshold, he heard an awu sound. Shu Lingyin, who was the size of a bean, raised her two small arms behind her, making her body lean forward, and raised her head to send a sharp sonic attack toward her mother. The second uncle calmly drank his wine. Shu Lingyu ate with her head down. Shu Xinyan had not yet recovered from the shock of his character collapse, and the auntie held her forehead, looking headache. When she saw Greenie coming over, she immediately said, "Take her away, take her away." Shu Qian glanced at the crying young sister and said kindly, "What's wrong?" The little bin accused, "Mother is a liar. Mother said that if we can go home, she would take me to Guiyu Tower." Dad just said, "Guiyu Tower?" Guiyu Tower was the top restaurant in Kyoto. Those who came and went were all dignitaries, and it didn't cater to the common people or the rich merchants. As a stupid child who couldn't remember her older brothers and sisters' names, she could remember Guiyu Tower. It was mainly because she had eaten there once. It can be seen that this child is not stupid, but her talent is used in the wrong place. Old Shu, you're good. You know how to divert disaster. You're even using your daughter as a tool. The little bean was the auntie's weak point, and she was like that with just a casual remark. The auntie sighed, cheeping, "It's all my fault. Auntie is a liar." Shu Qian instinctively became wary of her, and at this time, a small hand grabbed onto Shu Qian's clothes. "Big brother, take me." The little bin grabbed his pants and started climbing up. What was Guiyu Tower? The average consumption per person was 1 tael of silver. Shu Qian picked up the little bean and gave her to Greenie. The little bin cried out in protest and was taken down. The auntie kicked her husband and subtly pursed her lips. Shu Qian and the second uncle felt a little embarrassed, looking at his son, who had always been very inquisitive. But unfortunately, Shu Xinyan had experienced a social death and could not speak. He could only eat. The food was average, mainly because there was no broth. After all, everyone had just returned home. Shu Qian ate like chewing wax. He stared at the beautiful girl impatiently. "Ling Yu, why do you keep peeking at your brother?" The little girl's face flushed instantly. "I just wanted to know how Big Brother deduced the case from the case file. There is no perfect crime in the world, except for coincidence. Any artificial case can be traced," Shu Qian said, and Shu Xinyan couldn't help but straighten his back and listen carefully. "First of all, I noticed the problem with the tax silver through the journey of transporting the tax silver and the weight of the silver." Shu Qian explained his reasoning process. The more Shu Lingyu listened, the brighter her eyes became, as if she had received guidance from her teacher in private school. Her hands under the table clenched into fists. The 16-year-old beautiful younger sister lowered her head, hiding the worship in her eyes. Shu Shiping thumped the table excitedly and used a dirty word that Li Ayu had used to curse him. "So that's how it is. I didn't even notice it." But the auntie mercilessly dissed herself. "Husband, you clod. You can't even measure weights. What is a bad teammate?" Shu Shiping was a good example. Shu Qian asked, "Did they have guards with them when they counted the silver?" Shu Ershu recalled for a moment. "It seems so. How did you know?" Shu Qian looked at him resentfully.